So, good evening and welcome. My name's Tim Metcalf, and with me this evening, I've got Alastair Williamson, who's Wyld's CEO. Alastair is going to be taking you through a presentation, after which we'll have the opportunity for question and answers. I'd like to thank very much those who submitted questions in advance. I'll be putting those to Alastair at the end of the presentation. But if anybody does have additional questions, please do use the Q&A button at the bottom of your screen, type your question in, and I'll be putting those to Alastair at the end. Unfortunately, given the number of people we've got, it's not possible to come to you individually and ask you to unmute. So hopefully you will take advantage of that Q&A function if you've got anything that you'd like answered. Okay, so without further ado, I'll hand over to Alastair, who will take you through the presentation. Alastair.
Thanks very much, Tim. Well, good evening, everybody. My name's Alastair Williamson. I'm the CEO of Wyld Networks. Now, we've got a mix of attendees on this webinar. We have got some existing shareholders and we have some potential new shareholders. So I've put together a set of slides that hopefully will address both types of participants on this webinar. So I will go through what Wyld does, what problems we solve, etc. But then I'll get into a bit more detail, which is more operational, which potentially existing shareholders would like to understand. And then I will take some questions at the end. Obviously, I can answer a lot of questions. There's some questions I obviously can't answer, being a listed company, but I'll try and get to all your questions. So, Wyld Networks at a glance, who are we? So we were founded in 2016 in Cambridge in the UK. We have 31 employees as of the end of Q1 this year. We listed on the NASDAQ First North in July 2021 and also on the OTCQB in May 2022. We are a virtual satellite network operator. So we connect Internet of Things devices and sensors anywhere in the world. But as a virtual satellite network operator, we've partnered with satellite operators. So we've partnered with Eutelsat, Lacuna Space, DEWA, and Astrocast. We launched the satellite IoT network in December of last year, so about 5 months ago. We've built an order backlog of about 92 million kroner. And I'll go through our business model, but it's a very attractive business model that has a reoccurring revenue fee coming in. And it is our intention to add 5G capability to our solution sometime in 2023. So what do we solve? What problem do we solve? So the IoT market is set to reach about $106 billion by 2026, with over 125 billion IoT sensors deployed every year by 2030. That's a huge number of IoT sensors being deployed around the world. The problem is that only 15% of the world's surface has wireless coverage to allow that data to be collected from these IoT sensors. So that 85% of the world's surface has no internet access or wireless coverage to be able to collect data from those sensors. And this is really holding back the growth of the IoT market and also the growth of IoT from adding several $1 trillion to annual GDP by 2030. So what we've done is we've developed a solution called Wyld Connect, and it's an affordable wireless solution that connects IoT sensors to low Earth orbiting satellites to provide 100% global coverage. And today we're using a technology called LoRaWAN. As I said earlier, we will be launching 5G NB-IoT as a technology, and I'll explain why we're actually doing that. So we basically offer our customers the ability to collect data from their IoT devices anywhere in the world. And if you look at the key drivers for this market, so what is driving this market? There is a massive explosion in the need to collect data from anywhere in the world. Businesses, enterprises are all being driven by data. They're making decisions, informed decisions based on collecting data to do various things. But if you look at the two main outputs that our customers actually use that data for, they're using that data to improve operational efficiency and reduce costs. And they're also using that data to meet their environmental and sustainability goals. So what does it actually look like? We have basically three components to our solution. There's Wyld Connect, and you can see on the left-hand side of this diagram, Wyld Connect is either a module that's integrated into an IoT sensor, or Wyld Connect can be a terminal that can be connected to an IoT sensor. And the Wyld Connect modules and terminals currently today send data using LoRaWAN to low Earth orbiting satellites. And in the future, they'll be using 5G NB-IoT as a technology to send that data to satellites. These low Earth orbiting satellites orbit the Earth about once every 90 minutes. So the data is sent to satellites. Once the satellite passes over a ground station, the satellite sends the data down to the ground station and into a product we have called Wyld Fusion. And Wyld Fusion is a cloud-based product that basically does the provisioning, the onboarding, the network management, and the securitization of the data. We then provide that data to our customers. Now, our customers have industry platforms and various different apps that allows them to visualize that data, and our customers use that data to make informed decisions, either looking at their operational efficiency or looking at some sustainability or environmental goals. So they make informed decisions on that data collected from these remote sensors. So if I look at the products themselves, what are the components and what is the revenue model? So we have the Wyld Connect module, as I explained. That's a piece of hardware that's embedded into a sensor, and we charge up to $40 per module. We've also introduced the Wyld Connect terminal. I've shown you a picture there on the right-hand side. So the terminal is basically contains the Wyld Connect module, but it also contains all the battery backup. It contains a lot more intelligence, the modem capability. It's also got the solar power capability on it. And that's another product that we sell to our customers. And we sell the Wyld Connect terminal for up to $499 per terminal. And then there's the third component, which is the data component, the Wyld Connect data. And this is the fee that our customers pay us to actually use the network. And the way that we charge that fee is very, very simple. Our customers pay a fee of up to $5 per month per module or terminal that's been deployed in the field. So that's where our recurring revenue comes from. So a very simple business model. If I can equate it to a mobile network operator, it's very similar in respect. With a mobile network operator, you buy your handset, which is a one-off fee, and then you pay a subscription fee to actually use the service. Our model is virtually exactly the same, but obviously our application is for satellite IoT connectivity. So just to go through some of the target markets and applications, I'm going to just focus on a few of them, but you can see from the verticals, there's agriculture, energy, which is oil and gas. There's utilities, that's water and electricity. There's supply chain logistics, and there's environment. And as you can imagine, those industry sectors or verticals all have assets that are in that 85% of the world's surface that's got no access to the internet. So they need our satellite IoT solution to be able to collect their data from all of their sensors in all of those locations. And the use cases are huge. There's multiple use cases. If I can take the oil and gas sector, so the energy sector, in pipeline monitoring, there's over 1.2 million kilometers of oil and gas pipes around the world. And that's just above ground oil and gas pipelines. And in 2020, corrosion created incidents on those pipelines that cost the oil and gas operators $10.9 billion in maintaining, repairing, and fixing leakages. That's a huge amount of money each year that's spent by the oil and gas operators just to maintain their oil and gas pipelines. So what they're doing is they're deploying corrosion sensors onto the pipelines. And those corrosion sensors basically collect data about moisture content in the pipelines. That data is sent to their operational headquarters, and they can get a good understanding of when to go out and repair those pipes before they actually become a problem. And just to give you an idea, just on that single use case in pipeline monitoring, in one oil field alone, they're basically looking at deploying 1.7 million corrosion sensors. Now, those corrosion sensors are going to be in locations where there's no existing connectivity. So the oil and gas operators are looking for satellite IoT solutions to be able to collect that data to improve their operational efficiencies and save a lot of money. If I take another one, tank level monitoring in the oil and gas space, there's over 6.8 million storage tanks in the oil and gas space, and that's just in the midstream operations. So I'm not talking about residential tanks. I'm talking about, midstream oil and gas operators' tanks. They've got over 6.8 million out there, and they need to understand what level of oil or gas actually exists in those tanks. And today they're looking at upgrading the capability to actually deploy sensors into those tanks and then collect data to actually improve their operational efficiencies as well. And if I take another one in logistics, we look at shipping and containers. It's very difficult to know how many containers are out there in the world, but estimates put the number of containers out there in the world at about 43 million containers. Now, insurance companies are basically forcing the container leaseholders and the shipping companies to put sensors on those containers. And the reason they're putting sensors on those containers are to measure fluctuations in temperature, shock detection, location of those containers, and also to be able to understand predictive expected time of arrival of those containers. Because there's a huge amount of money that insurance companies are paying out for goods that are lost or perished in transit. And out of that 43 million containers, the shipping industry is looking at equipping 30% of them with sensors. That's over 12 million containers being deployed with IoT sensors. Once again, those containers, whether they be on sea or land, are going to be in areas where there's no access to the internet. So they need satellite IoT connectivity solutions to collect that data. But as I say, there's multiple use cases. I'm not going to go through all of them, but as you can imagine, we're focusing on verticals that are in that 85% of the world's surface where there's no access to the internet. So just to give you an idea of some of our customers, Chevron in the oil and gas space, British American Tobacco in the agricultural space, Syngenta in the agricultural space, Bayer, American Towers, who really are one of the largest terrestrial LoRaWAN providers in the world. If you look at the size of these companies, collectively they are worth over $480 billion in market cap. So these are large customers we're dealing with that have got problems they need to solve. As I said earlier, our satellite partners are Eutelsat, probably the second largest satellite provider by revenue. As you may know, they've also merged with OneWeb, Astrocast, Lacuna, and also the Dubai Electricity and Water Authority are actually launching their own satellites to provide connectivity in the utility space. So now I really want to, I've sort of laying down what we do and why we're doing it. I just want to come down and talk a bit more about where we are in the journey. And people ask me sort of, where is Wyld? And I would sort of categorize Wyld as moving out of the startup phase and now moving into the scale-up phase. As I talked about earlier, we have generated a substantial number of orders across multiple industries. And, you know, since we launched the network in December last year, our order backlog has increased over 190%, growing from about 32 million krona to 92 million krona. If we look at that same time duration, we've increased the number of modules that have been ordered on us. That's the Wyld Connect module, from 113,000 to 226,000 modules, which is basically an order value of about 61 million out of the 92 coming from the Wyld Connect module. As I showed you earlier, we've also looked at developing our own terminal, and I'll explain a bit later why we've developed the terminal, but we've developed the terminal. And we've got our order intake on quantities gone from 0, obviously, to 3,000 this year. And just out of those 3,000 terminals we've got orders for, you know, that represents about 15 million krona worth of order intake. And then if I have a look at by value, you know, 84% of the order intake we have at the moment is for hardware. So that's for Wyld Connect modules and Wyld Connect terminals. The other 16% is for data. Now, obviously, the amount of data orders we've got is only a fraction of the amount of data orders we will be receiving for our customers to be able to utilize those modules and terminals. So we expect to see the biggest growth coming forward is when the customers start to place orders for using the modules when they're deployed in the field. At the moment, they represent a fraction of the orders, 16% only, but we expect that to grow really substantially. So in reality, we've got ourselves to a position, when I talked about moving from startup to scale up, where we've got an order backlog now of 92 million krona. The really good news about this is that order backlog, once deployed in the field and operational, will take Wyld Networks cash flow positive. Obviously, we're not just relying on the purchase orders we've got at the moment. We're also generating more purchase orders on the LoRaWAN solution. And in a minute, I'll talk to you about the 5G NB-IoT piece, which will be generating further orders. And in respect to deploying the product into the market, so we're basically looking at ramping up our shipments in Q3, so starting to get volume out into our customers' hands in the Q3 period. And to give you an idea of the pipeline, when I talk about pipeline, I'm talking about the number of opportunities that we're working on to convert into business. We have a pipeline of about 360 million krona. And that sort of ranges from 10% opportunities to 90% opportunities. So 10% opportunities being deals that we've just started with customers, we're engaging with customers, and we mark them as a 10% opportunity. And that ranges up to 90%, where we're sort of in the negotiation stage and the closure stage. But I just wanted to give you an idea of the view of the size of the pipeline that we currently have at the moment, and we're working towards closing. And so now, if we just look at the Wyld Connect order backlog, LoRaWAN only. So I'm not talking about 5G NB-IoT. I'm just talking about the order backlog we've got at the moment, which is supporting LoRaWAN as a technology. That order backlog's about 92 million, as I said earlier. And I wanted to give you a view of where those orders have been placed. So regionally and by country, where are we going to be shipping these orders? So South Africa represents basically the largest territory that we're actually shipping to. Brazil comes next, then Egypt, Oman, and the US. And you can see up actually put into that pie chart the millions of SEK per country or per region. So you get an idea out of that 92 million, how many millions are going to each country. And then on the right-hand side, I've broken it down to the number of millions that are actually going into different verticals. So out of that 92 million, where is most of it actually currently going to? And as you can see from that chart, 39 million of it is going into agriculture. Oil and gas represents 25 million, metering representing 13, forestry 13, and 2 million in wind energy. So I think the takeaway from this is to just give you an understanding of where we're shipping stuff, what verticals they're actually going into, but also it gives you a view on the fact that there's an awful lot more territories we're focusing on out of the 5 territories we're currently working at the moment. And I'll get to you later about where we're sort of expanding. And also on the use case, the industrial sector, there's a lot of other use cases that we need to address, such as the supply chain logistics, the environmental space. So there's a lot more that we can actually expand into. But I also wanted to sort of give you a breakdown on not just the countries we're shipping to and the verticals we're shipping to, but I wanted to break it down by product. And I talked earlier about having 3 products. There's the Wyld Connect module, the Wyld Connect terminal, which is relatively new, and then there's Wyld Connect data, which is the service that the customers pay to actually use the network. So in respect to Wyld Connect modules, we've got 226,500 to be shipped. And that represents about 62 million kroner. Now, I've had to convert from US dollars, and each order has got a different exchange rate to SEK. So it's an approximation in kroner of $62 million. And then if we look at the Wyld Connect terminal, we've had orders for 3,000 of them. And that actually represents 16 million kroner. Because obviously the terminal is a lot more expensive than the module itself. So it's quite a nice business to get, because we can actually generate higher revenue numbers on lower quantities. So in total, we've got total hardware devices, approximately 330,000 devices. And I'll call them devices because they're modules and terminals. So 230,000 devices to be deployed, and that's just based on our current order backlog. And each of those devices, once they're deployed, will attract up to 50 krona per month per device as a reoccurring revenue model. As I said earlier, the data orders we've got, which are showing at about 14 million krona, actually only support a fraction of the number of those 230,000 devices that we've got orders for. So we're looking to get all of the data orders for our customers, and we expect that to grow exponentially. So I hope that's given people a better idea of where we're shipping to, what's the use case, what the breakdown is, what the potential is in respect to units, and really what the potential is in respect to the data piece. As I say, 330,000 units to be deployed and basically generating up to 50 krona per month per device as our reoccurring revenue. Now, I talked earlier about 5G NB-IoT. So today we support LoRaWAN as a technology. Now, there is a family of low power, wide area or low LPWAN technologies. And there's about 5 different technologies in that family. We call it LPWAN technology family. And inside that family, there is LoRaWAN, which we currently support. And that's predicted to take up to about 36% of all IoT connectivity by 2025. But there's also NB-IoT, and that's predicted to take up to 40% of the LPWAN IoT market share. So it was absolutely obvious to Wyld that, yes, we've got LoRaWAN, but now we need to also support NB-IoT. It does two things for Wyld. Obviously, it doubles our addressable market from about $670 million US to about 1.3 billion US dollars by 2025, and that's our Wyld's addressable market. But what it also does is, as you're all aware, when the 5G licenses were issued to all the mobile operators, and they paid a lot of money for those 5G licenses, they received a bit of spectrum in that 5G license that they could use for IoT, namely NB-IoT or LTE Cat-M. Now, those mobile operators are rolling out their 5G networks, and they've probably rolled out as much as they're going to roll out at this point in time. And those 5G networks for mobility are really focused on urban and suburban areas. They're not going to roll out into the rural areas. So what the mobile operators want to do, companies like Verizon, AT&T, Vodafone, Deutsche Telekom, they want to go to their customers and offer them a complete IoT solution utilizing 5G NB-IoT, but offer them a solution that can provide connectivity in urban and suburban areas, but also connectivity in rural areas, that other 85% of the world's surface that's got no access to the internet. And obviously, that's the exact solution that we're offering to our customers. So this allows us to engage with some very large and some very new customer sets, the mobile operators. So I wanted to show you this map. This is where we've got deployments. As you can see, our focus has been on the Middle East, a bit in Africa, a bit in Europe, the United States, and Latin America. Now, some of these are trials, some of these are deployments, but you can see there's still a lot of blank spaces here, and there's a huge population and a huge opportunity for Wyld in those white areas. So this year, we're going to do a lot of focus on getting our solution into Asia-Pac. So when I talk about Asia-Pac, I'm talking India all the way through to Australia. We're going to put a lot more focus into the African continent. We've got into South Africa, but there's still huge opportunities in the rest of Africa. So we're going to start towards the end of this year focusing on getting Wyld into those territories where we currently aren't at the moment. Now, a bit about the TO3 warrant program. This is mainly for the existing shareholders who are on this call. So we're in the middle of our TO3 warrant program. The volume weighted average price during the measurement period came out at about 10.44 krona, which basically gave everyone that's got TO3 warrants the ability to buy those to convert those TO3 warrants into shares at 7.31 krona. So a pretty fantastic deal if you've got TO3 warrants. The total number of TO3 warrants out there at the moment is 2.27 million. So that's the total that will be converted into shares if they're fully subscribed for. Now, the subscription period started on the 17th of May and it ends on the 31st of May. So in the middle of the subscription period, the period at which you convert your warrants into shares, I would make sure that everyone's aware that some of the banks in Sweden do close before the 31st, so they might not take the subscription up until the 31st. They might close a couple of days beforehand, and the last day of trading warrants will be the 29th of May. So if you want to buy warrants or sell your warrants, you can do so up until the 29th of May, which is Monday next week. So just to give you an idea of the use of proceeds, I think it's fairly obvious. We're going to be using the use of proceeds here to focus on commercial expansion into Asia-Pac, which I talked about a bit earlier. But also we're going to put some of the proceeds into the development of the 5G NB-IoT product offering, which makes an awful lot of sense in basically doubling the size of our market, but also going to be using it for ramping up volume manufacture. And what I can say, and I think we put out a press release yesterday about it, is that already we've got commitments from 11 current shareholders for approximately 49% of the total number of warrants. So those are commitments to basically convert their warrants into shares. And that's 49% of the 2.275 million warrants that are out there. And that's really good news because, you know, when we went through tier ones and tier twos, we had commitments of about 30 odd percent. We're in the 30s. This time around, we've got commitments for 49% just from 11 current shareholders. So I would encourage you to have a look at the tier 3 warrants, and they're good value for money. Now, just a bit about where, you know, we've been in the news an awful lot. And I just want to sort of highlight just a few press releases that have gone out over the last few weeks, well, last few days. If we take the first one, we put out a press release about our partnership with Eutelsat and Thales with the European Space Agency. And I see there's actually a question on that, so I'll explain a bit more about that project in the Q&A session. But we also put out a press release a couple of weeks ago on a project that we won with Innovate UK. And Innovate UK is the British government's funding body. And the British government, fund innovation. And this is really quite a smart project in that we're working with a company called AgriSound, who've developed a sensor that uses audio technology to identify pollinators, so bees and insects. And let's be honest, if it wasn't for pollinators, we'd all have a real big problem when it comes to the ecosystem and the food supply chain. So they've built a sensor that basically listens to its surroundings to pick up noises that identifies itself as insects and bees, basically pollinators in agriculture. They're using our solution basically to collect that data, to analyze that data, to understand whether they need more pollinators, less pollinators, to actually increase the yield of crop in that location. So it's really an agricultural play, but we do see agriculture as a big opportunity for Wyld. We also put out a press release, I think it was this Monday, on a new order we received from the United States. It was about 9.1 million krona. It was for the oil and gas arena, and it actually included modules and terminals. And you know, I'll explain a bit later in the Q&A section why we are doing terminals, but it's a great order for us, and it's really focusing on oil tank or storage tank measurements. I talked about that as a use case earlier on, of being 8.6 million storage tanks in the midstream environment in oil and gas. So it's a huge opportunity. But we're using this customer as a system integrator to basically sell through them, who are then reselling onto the oil and gas operators, particularly in the US. And that's mainly because they've got existing contracts with the oil and gas operators, such as ExxonMobil, Chevron. They've got existing contracts. So we're leveraging their existing contracts to sell through them, for them to sell into their existing customer base where they already have contracts. So it reduces the amount of time it takes to get a contract with some of these really large organizations. And the fourth press release that I'm sure you all read came out about 3 weeks ago, which is really quite interesting. It's all about our multi-operator capability with our products. And I really wanted to emphasize this today, is that we believe with Wyld Connect and Wyld Fusion, we are the only guys out there that've got a multi-satellite operator solution, in that our module can collect data or send data from two different satellite operators. So you don't need a different module for each satellite operator. Same with the Fusion platform, we can collect data from basically all of our partners and then present that data to our customers. But also, you may have noticed that I've been quite busy on interviews over the last few weeks, and I would encourage you to go and have a look at some of these interviews. Redeye published an interview this morning, so it's on the redeye.se website, and you can go and have a look at that. And I talk about our progress through Q1, and I talk about where we're going in the future. Also, this week on Monday, Dargensbos also put out an interview talking about Wyld moving from its startup phase to its scale-up phase. And yesterday, we put out an interview with Smag Bollocks Podden. That's a difficult word for me to pronounce, but it's a podcast out there, and it's episode 72. Go out and listen to some of these interviews where I get into a lot more detail about what Wyld is actually doing and what our ambitions are and where we think we're moving to in the future. So I've now come to the summary slide, which has got a lot of words on it. So I'm not going to go through these words. I'm going to basically answer the question that I get asked a lot of times. And a lot of times people are saying to me, Alastair, why invest in Wyld? And I'll give you three reasons that I always go back to people about why invest in Wyld. We have a solution that solves real world problems. We have customers that want to collect data from their assets where there's no connectivity today. And we offer them an affordable satellite IoT solution. And I really put the emphasis on affordable satellite IoT solution. We're solving problems that customers are trying to fix or need to fix to improve their operational efficiency and support their environmental and sustainability goals. That's number one. Number two, we have a large order backlog. We've built that order backlog up, and we're looking to start to get volume distribution in Q3 this year to satisfy our customers. So we've got a large order backlog, and that order backlog currently today is sufficient enough, once deployed and operational, for Wyld to go cash flow positive. And the third piece I like to talk about why invest in Wyld is that we are looking at how to expand our product portfolio. We support LoRaWAN today, which represents about 36% of the LPWAN IoT connectivity share. We're implementing 5G NB-IoT onto our solution, which will basically add another 47% of the market share, so doubling the market share. But also, we're also looking at other technologies. We're looking at other solutions that will take us forward beyond the next few years. So we're a very innovative company. We're ensuring that we stay ahead of the competition. So those are the three main reasons I give to people who talk about why should I invest in Wyld. So I'd like to end the presentation there and pass back to Tim.
Thank you very much, Alastair. Fascinating presentation. I think you've answered one or two of the questions that we've received, but as you referenced, we have got some that have been sent in advance and have come through. The first area that people were looking for a bit more clarity around was the announcement last week of the satellite-to-satellite connectivity project. How this could impact Wyld in the industry, and also fundamentally, what's the positive things about satellite-to-satellite data connectivity versus sending it down to Earth?
Yeah, absolutely. So that references to the European Space Agency project we're working on with Thales and Eutelsat. And so very simply, it's about connecting satellites directly to satellites. And the plan with that project is that Wyld Connect, our module, is going to be deployed in satellites. And so Wyld Connect, as you know, uses LoRaWAN as a technology to connect two things. And we're going to be able to connect satellites directly to satellites using the Wyld Connect module inside a satellite, a low Earth orbiting satellite. Now, the benefits there are huge to the industry. So number one, for satellite IoT, let's just look at satellite IoT space to start off with. It's about how do you control and understand where your satellites are located. So that's a very important part of operating a satellite network, is understanding where they are in relation to other satellites. But also, this whole satellite to satellite piece will do two things. One, it will reduce the latency, that's the time it takes for data to be collected and sent to a satellite, for that satellite to pass over the ground station and send the data down to ground. Obviously, what we can do, and that's the plan, data can go to satellite, and that satellite will look for the nearest satellite above a ground station, send it to the satellite or to that satellite above the ground station, which will then send the data down to ground. So that reduces the time lag or the latency in our customers being able to collect data. So that is part of the project that we're looking at. But also, if you look at being able to reduce the latency, this has huge implications on the whole satellite industry. So there's a lot of satellites, low Earth orbiting satellites being deployed in space. Being able to create satellite-satellite connectivity, we can, as an industry, look at reducing the number of satellites that have to be launched to provide the same level of service. So we see it as a twofold benefit, one that's applicable to Wyld and the other one that's really applicable to the satellite industry in general. So really exciting project to get involved in.
Definitely. We've got other questions looking at terminals and modules. Could you just give us a little bit more color on what type of customer is likely to buy a terminal versus the type of customer that's buying modules?
Yeah, sure. So the Wyld Connect module, which is obviously that small piece of hardware that we sell for up to about sort of $40 per module. The customers that are buying that device, that module, basically are usually the sensor manufacturers and companies that have significant wireless and development skills, because they want to embed that piece of electronics into their sensor, or they want to embed that piece of electronics into their terminal. So they're either sensor manufacturers or they're companies that have the capability to do a lot of engineering work, and it's not easy, but a lot of engineering work to actually create a terminal. And those terminals will be connected to existing sensors. But what we found is our customers were coming to us, or some customers were coming to us and say, Alastair, we actually want a terminal. We're not a sensor manufacturer. We don't have the expertise to actually take your module and develop it into a terminal. We want you to actually build a terminal for us. And so these type of customers are mainly system integrators that are going to take a solution, an end solution, a terminal from Wyld, and they're basically going to package it with a sensor from another company and then create a complete end-to-end solution. So we think it's a brilliant idea, because now we're sort of addressing sensor manufacturers as well as customers that are system integrators that want an end product that they can then integrate with their sensors and provide an overall solution.
Thank you. I think that certainly makes perfect sense to me. You mentioned the 5G NB-IoT opportunity. Could you talk a little bit more about who you might be partnering with that and who the likely customers are for that versus the existing focus on low RAN?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'll take the easy part first. So if we look at customers that we're focusing with at the moment, and I think I actually mentioned in my slide. So there's the customers such as Verizon, AT&T, Deutsche Telekom. These are the guys that we're engaged with in discussions on 5G NB-IoT. So they're the 5G mobile operators. And obviously, we will engage with a lot more other 5G mobile operators to actually give them the ability to put a complete offer out into the markets themselves. But in respect to the partnership with the satellite provider that's going to support the 5G NB-IoT piece, we can't at this moment actually tell you who it is. Obviously, once we're in a position to inform everyone, we will inform everyone of who that satellite partner is.
Thank you, and completely understood there. The final clarifications that people have been asking a couple of questions on, obviously talk a lot about the order backlog. When can we expect that to start translating into to revenues for the company? And what do you see? I know as a public company you can't make forecasts, but can you give us some sort of guidance over the likely timelines for a typical contract and when the revenues are likely to start flowing?
Yeah, absolutely. So that's a complex question that's
Sure.
There's different answers on different threads here. So we're going through initial product runs at the moment with the factory, and we've gone through several of them to getting the product to the position where it can go into the field, it can stay in the field for 5 to 7 years. We don't want replacement product, so we're going through all of that new product introduction piece with the factory. And our plans at the moment is that we would start to look at shipping volume in the Q3 period. So this year we will start to ship volume. I'm not going to give you a view on quantities we will ship this year, because that's just providing a forecast to the market, but I can say we will start to ship in volume this year. Now, part of your question talked about a time lag between orders and revenue, and there is a time lag, and that time lag is quite clear. Maybe I can explain that time lag. So first of all, there's shipping in volume, which I've just explained is one time lag. But also our customers also have to do a lot of work with their sensors to be able to integrate our module into their sensor. So they have to go through development cycles. Those with existing sensors go through development cycles to implement our module into their sensor. And we have customers that are developing brand new sensors. So they're going through their development stage. And so those are the two sort of pieces. We've got some customers that are really good, they can develop quickly. We've got some customers that are taking time to develop. But I think it all comes down to when are we going to start to ship volume, which will give you a better idea of where we'll be. And as I'm saying, we're looking and planning to start shipping volume in the Q3 of this year.
Excellent. Well, thank you very much, Alastair. I think that's got to the end of the questions that people have submitted, and thanks very much for everybody who did submit questions. I certainly found that fascinating. I certainly firm believer in the reasons why you should be investing in Wyld. So hopefully everybody who's joined us this evening will share my view of that. I'd like to thank Alastair for the presentation, but most of all, everybody who's taken the time out this evening to join us. Alastair is available for further questions. Obviously, contact details on announcements and on the website. And please do get in touch if you've got anything further. But thank you very much, and enjoy the rest of your evening.
Thank you very much.